I never thought my own sister would call me one rainy Tuesday evening and tell me I was no longer welcome at her wedding because I would embarrass the family. Yet there I was, clutching my phone in trembling hands as my world collapsed around me. The sister I had protected, supported, and loved unconditionally for 28 years had just crushed me with a few cruel words, and the worst part was, she had no idea what secrets I had been keeping to protect her perfect image all these years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The call came just 6 weeks before Vanessa's wedding. I was in the middle of hemming the bridesmaid dress she had insisted I wear despite it being 2 sizes too small. Another subtle dig at my appearance that I had swallowed for the sake of peace. My phone lit up with her name, and I answered, with a smile in my voice, assuming she was calling about some wedding detail or another bachelorette party question. "Hey, Ness, I was just working on the dress alterations. I think I figured out how to make it." "Olivia, we need to talk." Her voice was cold, clinical, nothing like the warm tone she usually used with me, her only sister. Something in her voice made me set down the sewing needle and sit up straight. "What's wrong? Is everything okay with the venue?" I asked, immediately concerned. Vanessa had been stressed for months about her perfect day, and I'd been her emotional support system through every minor crisis. The florist who suggested carnations instead of peonies. The caterer who couldn't source the exact champagne her fiancé Troy's family preferred. The invitation font that wasn't distinctive enough. There was a pause. I could hear her take a deep breath. "Troy and I have been talking, and we think it would be better if you didn't come to the wedding." The words didn't make sense at first. I actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of bizarre joke. Very funny, Ness. Now what's really going on? "I'm serious, Liv." There was no warmth in her voice, no hint of apology. "It's just that, you know how important Troy's family is. His father is running for state senate next year, and there will be all sorts of important people there, photographers, potential donors." My mouth went dry as I began to understand what she was saying. "And what does that have to do with me not coming to your wedding?" She sighed, like I was being deliberately obtuse. "Liv, you know what I mean. You're not exactly, you don't exactly fit the image we're trying to project. The blue hair, the tattoos, the way you dress. And you know how you can be at social events. You say whatever comes to mind, you don't filter yourself. Troy's worried you might say something political or controversial." The room seemed to tilt around me. My own sister was uninviting me. From her wedding because I didn't fit her aesthetic. Because my appearance and personality might reflect poorly on her new in-laws. Because I was, in her eyes, an embarrassment. "I've been your bridesmaid for the past year. I've been to every cake tasting, every venue visit, every dress fitting. I've held your hair back when you got food poisoning from the catering samples. I've listened to you debate invitation fonts at 3 a.m, and now, 6 weeks before the wedding, you're telling me I can't come because I might embarrass you?" "Don't be so dramatic, Olivia. This isn't personal." "Not personal?" My blood boiled. "Then what is it, Vanessa?" "Because it feels pretty personal from where I'm standing." She made that little huffing sound she always made when she was annoyed. "Look, Gabriella already agreed to take your place as bridesmaid." "Gabriella? Your college roommate who you haven't spoken to in 2 years?" "That Gabriella?" "She fits the dress better," Vanessa said flatly, and the casual cruelty of the statement stole my breath. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. Ness, I'm your sister. Your only sister? Are you seriously telling me that you'd rather have a near stranger at your wedding than me? Because she's thinner and doesn't have blue hair? It's not just that, she said, her voice taking on that defensive tone I knew so well. You know, how you and Dad get when you're together. The last 3 family gatherings ended with you two screaming at each other about politics. Troy's family is very conservative, and his father can't afford any scenes. I closed my eyes, processing this new twist. Our father, Victor Sullivan, was a difficult man on his best days. A former military officer turned corporate executive, he ruled our household with an iron fist and uncompromising standards. Nothing was ever good enough for him. Not my straight A's, not Vanessa's perfect poise, not our mother's endless attempts to please him. When I turned 18, I broke away from his control, changing my appearance, pursuing art instead of the business degree he demanded, and establishing firm boundaries that he constantly tried to violate. Vanessa had taken a different approach. She molded herself into exactly what he wanted, the perfect, obedient daughter who never questioned his authority or opinions. She went to the right school, dated the right men, took the right job at his friend's law firm, and now she was marrying Troy Bennett, the son of one of Dad's golf buddies, a man cut from the same cloth as our father. So because Dad and I don't get along, I'm uninvited. Shouldn't you be uninviting him then? He's the one who always starts it. Even as the words left my mouth, I knew it was futile. Victor Sullivan would never be uninvited from anything. He was too important, too connected, too wealthy. I, on the other hand, was expendable. Don't be ridiculous. Dad is walking me down the aisle. I could practically hear her rolling her eyes. Look, this isn't a debate, Olivia. I'm just letting you know the decision we've made. We? Did Troy make this decision, or did Dad? Her silence told me everything I needed to know. Vanessa, please, I'm your sister. We shared a room for 16 years. I taught you how to ride a bike, how to apply eyeliner, how to stand up for yourself on the playground when those girls were bullying you. Does none of that matter? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her voice softened just slightly. Of course it matters. But this is my future we're talking about. Troy's family is really important, and this wedding is like my introduction into their world. I can't afford any problems. And there it was. I was a problem to be managed, an inconvenience. To be removed so my sister could fully assimilate into her fiancé's upper crust world. I thought about all the secrets I'd kept for Vanessa over the years. The time she crashed Dad's car in high school, and I took the blame, enduring 2 months of grounding so she could still attend prom. The time I covered for her when she was supposed to be at a study group but was really with her college boyfriend. The way I'd never told a soul about walking in on Troy with another woman at their engagement party, accepting his tearful explanation that it was a one-time mistake, and his pleading promise that he really did love my sister. I had protected Vanessa her entire life, putting her happiness before my own time and again. And this was how she repaid me. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice eerily calm even as tears streamed down my face. You're choosing Troy's family's opinion over your own sister. It's not like that, she protested weakly. It's exactly like that. I took a deep breath. You know what, Vanessa? You're right. I don't belong at your wedding, Not because I would embarrass you, but because I don't think I could stand there and watch you marry a man who cheated on you at your own engagement party." There was a shocked gasp from the other end of the line. "What are you talking about?" My hand flew to my mouth, but it was too late. The secret I'd kept for over a year had slipped out in a moment of hurt and anger. I hadn't planned to tell her. What good would it do now, so close to the wedding? She was clearly determined to go through with it, but her casual cruelty had broken something inside me. "Nothing. Forget I said anything." I backpedaled, suddenly afraid of the damage I'd done. "No, Olivia. You don't get to drop a bomb like that and then take it back. What are you talking about Troy cheating?" I closed my eyes, my head pounding. "The engagement party at the Bellevue Hotel. I went looking for you to help with your speech." I walked into the small library off the main hall and found Troy with Melissa Carter. Melissa was another associate at the law firm where both Vanessa and Troy worked. "You're lying." Her voice was shaking. "You're making this up because you're heard about the wedding." Why would I lie about something like this? I've kept it secret for a year because he begged me not to tell you. He said it was a mistake, that he'd had too much to drink, that it would never happen again. I agreed because I thought it would only hurt you to know. Maybe that was wrong of me, but I was trying to protect you. By dropping this on me 6 weeks before my wedding? Her voice rose hysterically. "This is exactly what I mean, Olivia. You always have to make everything about you. You couldn't just accept not being in the wedding. You had to try to ruin it completely." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's not fair, Vanessa. I've been keeping this secret to protect your happiness. I never planned to tell you." "I don't believe you," she said flatly. "I think you're jealous. You've always been jealous of me, of my relationship with Dad, of how easily things come to me. You couldn't stand that I'm getting married to someone successful while you're still single, working at that little art gallery, living in that tiny apartment." Her words cut deep because there was a grain of truth in them. Not that I was jealous of her relationship with Troy. God, no. But I had sometimes envied how easily she navigated the world, how she never seemed to struggle with our father's approval the way I did, how everything in her life seemed to fall perfectly into place while I was constantly swimming upstream. "That's not true," I whispered, but my defense sounded weak even to my own ears. "Save it, Olivia. I don't want to hear it, and I definitely don't want to see you at my wedding. In fact, it's probably better if we don't talk for a while. I need to focus on my future with Troy, not deal with your drama." And with that, she hung up. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence where my sister's voice had been. The bridesmaid dress lay forgotten on my lap, the needle and thread dangling uselessly from its hem. Outside, rain pelted against my apartment windows, matching the storm raging inside me. How had it come to this? How had my relationship with my only sibling deteriorated to the point where she would cut me out of one of the most important days of her life? And how had I allowed my hurt feelings to push me into revealing the very secret I'd sworn to keep? I set my phone down and walked to the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The truth was, Vanessa and I had been drifting apart for years. As children, we'd been inseparable despite our differences. 3 years older, I had been her protector, her confidant, her guide through the treacherous waters of childhood and adolescence. But as we grew older, those differences had become chasms. Vanessa embraced the path of least resistance, becoming the daughter our father always wanted. I chose rebellion, refusing to contort myself to fit his narrow vision of success. Each choice we made pushed us further apart, until we were barely recognizable to each other. Still, I had never imagined it would come to this, being uninvited from her wedding for the crime of being myself. My phone buzzed with a text. With a flutter of hope that perhaps Vanessa had calmed down and reconsidered, I picked it up. But it wasn't from my sister. It was from my mother. "Olivia, what did you say to your sister? She's hysterical. Your father is furious. Call me immediately." Of course. Vanessa had already run to our parents, no doubt sharing her version of events, conveniently leaving out the part where she uninvited me from her wedding before I ever mentioned Troy's infidelity. I tossed the phone onto the couch without responding. I knew what would happen if I called my mother back. She would listen to my side with half an ear while silently taking Vanessa's part, then gently suggest that perhaps I should apologize for upsetting my sister, regardless of who was actually in the wrong. That had been the pattern our entire lives. My younger sister, the golden child who could do no wrong. Me, the troublemaker who needed to try harder, be better, cause fewer problems. Well, not this time. This time, I wouldn't apologize for speaking. The truth, however poorly timed it might have been. This time, I wouldn't smooth things over just to keep the peace. I picked up the bridesmaid dress and studied it. Vanessa had insisted I wear this pale pink monstrosity despite knowing I hated the color, despite knowing the style wasn't flattering on my curvier frame. It was just one more way she had tried to control me, to force me into the mold of the sister she wanted instead of accepting the sister she had. With sudden resolve, I grabbed my scissors and cut the dress straight down the middle. The sound of tearing fabric was immensely satisfying. My phone rang again. This time it was my father. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what his message would contain: disappointment, anger, accusations. Victor Sullivan had one mode of communication with me: criticism. Sure enough, his voice was cold and controlled when I played the message. "Olivia, your behavior is, as usual, appalling. Call your sister immediately and apologize for these ridiculous accusations. I won't have you ruining her special day with your petty jealousy." Petty jealousy. That was rich coming from a man who had never bothered to attend a single one of my art shows, who had dismissed my career choice as a hobby rather than a real job, who had threatened to cut me off financially when I changed my major from business to fine arts, a threat he ultimately made good on, forcing me to work 2 jobs to put myself through college. I deleted the message without a second thought. As the evening wore on, the texts and calls continued, from my mother, from my father, even from Troy himself, who had the audacity to call me a liar in a particularly nasty voicemail. Not one message came from Vanessa. By midnight, I'd had enough. I turned off my phone and poured myself a generous glass of wine, trying to process the day's events. My sister had uninvited me from her wedding because I might embarrass her perfect future in-laws. In response, I had revealed her fiancé's infidelity, a secret I had kept for over a year. Now my entire family was against me, again, and I was left alone with my anger and hurt. But beneath those emotions, something else stirred, a quiet, simmering resolve. For too long, I had been the family scapegoat, the one who was always wrong, always too much, always the problem. For too long, I had accepted that role, believing on some level that perhaps they were right. Perhaps I was too loud, too opinionated, too different. Not anymore. Vanessa's wedding was just the tipping point, the final straw in a lifetime of being treated as less than by the people who should have loved me unconditionally. I took a sip of wine and made a decision. I wouldn't apologize this time. I wouldn't smooth things over. I wouldn't accept being cast aside for the crime of being myself. And if Vanessa wanted to marry a man who couldn't remain faithful even through their engagement, that was her choice. But I wouldn't pretend it was a good one, and I wouldn't pretend that excluding me from her wedding was anything other than what it was: cruel and unfair. My sister had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my curtains, a sharp contrast to the previous day's rain. My head pounded slightly from the wine, but my resolve remained firm. I turned on my phone to find 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 5 voicemails, a coordinated familial assault designed to break me down and force me back into line. I ignored them all and made coffee, contemplating my next move. As I sipped from my favorite mug, a handmade ceramic piece from a local artist, my phone rang again. This time, it was a name I hadn't seen in a while: Cousin Mia. Mia was my father's sister's daughter, 2 years younger than me, and the only member of the extended family who had ever really understood me. Like me, she had refused to conform to the Sullivan family expectations. Unlike me, she had taken it a step further, legally changing her last name and moving across the country to Seattle, where she ran a successful graphic design business. We had been close as children and teenagers, but had drifted apart in recent years, connected mainly through occasional texts and social media likes. I answered immediately. "Mia, this is a surprise." "Hey, rebel cousin," she said, her voice warm. "So the Sullivan family gossip machine is working overtime. I've already received 3 separate calls about how you're ruining Vanessa's wedding with wild accusations." "What's really going on?" I laughed despite myself. Leave it to Mia to cut straight through the family propaganda. "How much time do you have?" I asked. "For this?" "All the time in the world. Spill it." So I did. I told her everything. Vanessa uninviting me, the revelation about Troy, the barrage of angry messages from my parents. As I spoke, the hurt and anger I'd been suppressing rose to the surface again. "I just don't understand," I finished, my voice catching. "How can my own sister throw me away so easily? How can she choose her fiancé's family's comfort over having me there? Am I really that embarrassing?" Mia's response was immediate and firm. "No, Liv, you're not embarrassing. You're authentic, which is something the Sullivans have never valued or understood. You know as well as I do that in this family, appearance has always mattered more than reality." Her words resonated deeply. The Sullivan family motto might as well have been, "What will people think?" Every decision, from where we vacationed to what activities we pursued, was filtered through the lens of external perception. "I know you're right," I said, "but it still hurts." "Of course it hurts. Your sister chose status over you. That's painful as hell. But Liv, this isn't about you being too much or not enough. This is about Vanessa and her priorities. And honestly, from what you're telling me, she's making a huge mistake marrying this guy." I sighed. That's what I'm afraid of. But when I tried to tell her about Troy, she accused me of making it up out of jealousy. "Classic Sullivan deflection," Mia snorted. "When faced with an uncomfortable truth, attack the messenger." We talked for almost an hour, Mia's perspective helping me see the situation with clearer eyes. By the time we hung up, I felt stronger, more centered. I still hadn't decided exactly what to do, but I knew I wouldn't be apologizing or retracting my words about Troy. After the call, I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. As assistant curator at a small but well-respected gallery, I was preparing for an upcoming exhibition featuring local artists. The work was engrossing enough to push thoughts of my family drama to the background, at least temporarily. But when I returned home that evening, reality was waiting for me in the form of a thick cream envelope propped against my door. My official uninvitation to the wedding, complete with a handwritten note from Vanessa. I think it's best if you don't attend. Please respect my wishes on this. V. No, dear Olivia. No, love your sister, not even her full name. Just V. As if we were distant acquaintances rather than sisters who had shared a bedroom, secrets, and countless moments of both conflict and connection. I crumpled the note in my fist, a fresh wave of hurt washing over me. It was one thing to be uninvited over the phone in a moment of anger. It was another to receive formal, written confirmation that my presence was unwanted. I was about to throw the uninvitation away when I noticed something sticking out of the envelope, a small piece of paper I hadn't seen initially. I pulled it out to find a check for $250 with dress reimbursement written on the memo line. The check felt like a final insult. Vanessa was literally paying me to stay away, as if our relationship could be reduced to a financial transaction. As if 28 years of sisterhood was worth exactly $250. I tore the check into tiny pieces and let them fall to the floor. Then I did something I hadn't planned to do. I called my mother back. She answered on the first ring. Olivia, finally. I've been worried sick. Have you? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Or have you just been worried? About how to make me fall in line? My mother sighed. I don't want to fight, Olivia. I just want to understand why you would tell such a horrible lie about Troy right before your sister's wedding. And there it was. The automatic assumption that I was lying, that I was the problem. My grip on the phone tightened. It wasn't a lie, Mom. I saw them with my own eyes. Troy and Melissa in the library at the Bellevue during their engagement party. He didn't even deny it when I confronted him. He just begged me not to tell Vanessa. But why would you keep it secret for a year and then suddenly tell her? Now? My mother's voice was suspicious. It seems very convenient timing. I laughed incredulously. Convenient? Mom, she uninvited me from her wedding. She told me I was too embarrassing to be there, that I might say something to upset Troy's precious family. Do you have any idea how that felt? Vanessa is under a lot of pressure, my mother said defensively. Troy's family is very important, and she wants to make a good impression. So that justifies cutting me out of one of the most important days of her life? I'm her sister. And she's marrying into the Bennett family. Do you understand what that means for her future? For all our futures? Senator Bennett has connections that could really help your father's business. We can't afford any disruptions. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I'm a disruption now? Because of my blue hair and tattoos? Because I might say something honest instead of something polite? My mother's silence was answer enough. Unbelievable, I whispered. You're taking her side. Again. I'm not taking sides, Olivia. I'm trying to keep the peace. Why can't you just apologize for what you said about Troy? Wear a wig to cover the blue hair for one day and be there for your sister? I closed my eyes, a lifetime of similar conversations flashing through my mind. Always, it was me who needed to change, me who needed to apologize, me who needed to be less myself to accommodate everyone else's comfort. No, I said finally. I won't apologize for telling the truth. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not, just to make Troy's family comfortable. And I won't attend a wedding I've been explicitly uninvited from. My mother made a small, disappointed sound. Then I don't know what else to say, Olivia. You're choosing to hurt your sister. No, Mom. Vanessa chose to hurt me. I'm just choosing not to let her. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, feeling strangely calm. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground with my family without shouting, without tears, without the desperate need for their approval that had defined so much of my existence. It felt liberating. I picked up the torn pieces of Vanessa's check and threw them in the trash. Then I opened my laptop and did something I'd been contemplating for months. I applied for a residency program at an artists' colony in New Mexico. It was a long shot. Only 8 artists were accepted each year, but it represented everything I wanted: freedom, creativity, distance from the toxic dynamics of my family. As I typed my application, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Whatever happened with Vanessa's wedding, whatever fallout came from my refusal to back down, I was finally putting myself first. And it felt right. The week after Vanessa's devastating phone call unfolded like a slow-motion car crash, every buzz of my phone triggered a wave of anxiety. Every email notification made my stomach clench. The Sullivan family had mobilized against me with military precision, a skill no doubt honed from years of practice whenever I stepped out of line. My father's calls grew increasingly threatening, shifting from demanding I apologize to Vanessa to warning about serious consequences if I continued to spread lies about Troy. My mother's approach was subtler but no less manipulative, alternating between guilt trips about breaking your sister's heart and gentle suggestions that perhaps I could just wear a nice wig and neutral clothes if I apologized promptly. By Friday, I'd had enough. I blocked my parents' numbers and emailed my boss requesting a week off, citing a family emergency, which wasn't entirely untrue. Mia called twice more, offering solidarity and suggesting I come visit her in Seattle until the wedding insanity blows over. I promised to consider it, but on Saturday morning, everything escalated. I was at the farmer's market, finding solace in the simple act of selecting fresh vegetables when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to find Helen Bennett, Troy's mother, standing by the heirloom tomato display, looking immaculate in designer casual wear that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Olivia, dear, I'm so glad I ran into you." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Do you have a moment to chat?" My instinct was to flee, but curiosity won out. "Mrs. Bennett, this is unexpected." She guided me away from the crowded stalls to a quieter corner. "I'll be direct, Olivia. This situation with Vanessa's wedding has gotten out of hand, and I'd like to propose a solution." "A solution," I repeated flatly. She nodded, reaching into her designer handbag and extracting an envelope. "I understand your feelings are hurt, and perhaps you're acting out because of that. So I'd like to offer you this." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. I stared at it, momentarily speechless. "What exactly is this for?" "Let's call it compensation," she said smoothly. "For the inconvenience of missing the wedding, for the bridesmaid dress you won't be wearing, for..." Adjusting your recollection of what you think you saw at the engagement party. The audacity left me breathless. You're trying to buy my silence? She winced slightly at my bluntness. I prefer to think of it as an incentive for discretion. My husband's campaign is gaining momentum. Troy and Vanessa have bright futures ahead of them. Why let one misunderstanding ruin so many lives? Misunderstanding, I echoed. Is that what Troy told you it was? A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face before her politician's wife mask slipped back into place. Troy has explained everything. It wasn't what you thought you saw. I know what I saw, Mrs. Bennet. Her smile tightened. $5,000? Is quite generous, Olivia, especially for someone in your financial situation. I understand the art world can be precarious. The subtle dig at my career choice, so reminiscent of my father's dismissals, ignited something inside me. I took the check, tore it into pieces, and let them flutter to the ground between us. I can't be bought, I said quietly. And the fact that you tried tells me everything I need to know about your family's values. No wonder Troy thought he could cheat on my sister and get away with it. Her face hardened. You're making a mistake. No, Mrs. Bennet. Vanessa's making a mistake marrying your son. But that's her choice to make. I turned to walk away, then paused. And by the way, you should know that I wasn't planning to say anything else about what I saw. I love my sister, even if she doesn't believe that right now. But your little bribery attempt has me reconsidering. I left her standing there, surrounded by torn pieces of her insulting offer, my heart pounding but my spirit strangely liberated. For years, I'd felt like the defective Sullivan, the one who never quite measured up to the family standard. But, in that moment, facing down Helen Bennett's attempted bribe, I realized I was the only one whose integrity wasn't for sale. When I returned to my apartment, I found another surprise waiting. My cousin Mia, sitting on my doorstep with 2 coffees. And a determined expression. Intervention time, she announced, handing me one of the cups. I decided, consider visiting Seattle wasn't cutting it. You're coming with me, Liv. Today. I blinked, momentarily overwhelmed. Mia, I can't just leave. Yes, you can, she interrupted. I've already talked to your boss. Don't look so shocked. We follow each other on Instagram, and I messaged her saying I was staging a cousin rescue mission. She thinks it's great that you're taking time off. Said you never use your vacation days anyway. That's invasive, I protested, but without much conviction. Mia shrugged. That's family. The good kind of family, not the Sullivan kind. Now go pack a bag. Our flight leaves in 3 hours. Flight? Mia, I can't afford. Already taken care of, she said firmly. Consider it an early birthday present or late Christmas or whatever makes you feel better about accepting it. But you're coming with me, Liv. You need perspective, and you're not going to get it sitting here waiting for the next Sullivan bomb to drop. Looking into her determined face, I felt a rush of gratitude so intense it brought tears to my eyes. While my immediate family was closing ranks against me, here was Mia, practically a stranger these days, showing up when I needed someone most. Okay, I said simply. Let me pack. 3 hours later, we were at 30,000 feet, sipping complimentary wine and watching the Midwest disappear beneath us. I felt a strange combination of guilt and relief. Guilt for fleeing, relief for escaping the suffocating pressure of my family's disappointment. Stop that, Mia said, nudging me with her elbow. Stop what? That thing you're doing with your face, the I'm a terrible person for taking care of myself expression. It's the Sullivan special, and I don't allow it in my presence. I laughed despite myself. Is it that obvious? Only to another Sullivan survivor. She clinked her plastic cup against mine. To breaking generational patterns of emotional manipulation. That's a mouthful for a toast. But worth celebrating, don't you think? She was right, of course. And over the next week in Seattle, I began to understand just how right she was. Mia's life was nothing like I'd imagined from her curated social media presence. Her graphic design business was thriving, her apartment was gorgeous but lived in, and she had built a community of friends who accepted each other completely. Quirks, flaws, blue hair, and all. The secret, she told me one night as we sat on her balcony overlooking Puget Sound, was realizing I could choose my family. Blood doesn't have to be the deciding factor. I thought about that a lot during my stay. About choice. About the family we're born into versus the family we create. About the patterns we're taught and the patterns we choose to break. By the time I returned to my city 10 days later, something fundamental had shifted inside me. The hurt remained. Vanessa's rejection was still a wound, but it no longer felt devastating. I had seen another way to live, surrounded by people who valued authenticity over appearance, kindness over status, truth over convenient lies. I came home to find my apartment exactly as I'd left it, but I was not the same person who had fled, in panic and hurt. I was calmer, steadier, clearer about who I was and what I deserved. Which was fortunate, because the storm hadn't passed in my absence. It had intensified. The day after my return, I received a formal cease and desist letter from the Bennett's family lawyer, threatening legal action if I continued to spread defamatory statements about Troy. The letter was deliberately intimidating, filled with legal jargon and vague threats about the consequences of defamation. I should have been terrified. The old Olivia would have been. Instead, I felt a strange sense of validation. They wouldn't be trying this hard to silence me if I wasn't telling the truth. I called Mia immediately. The Bennetts are threatening to sue me. Of course they are, she said, unsurprised. That's what people like them do when the truth is inconvenient. What should I do? Well, first remember that truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Second, they're bluffing. A lawsuit would mean discovery, depositions, basically airing all their dirty laundry in public. That's the last thing a political family wants. So I just ignore it? No, you respond through an attorney. Luckily, my best friend happens to be one. I'll put you in touch. But Liv? This means you've got them scared. You have more power in this situation than you realize. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen, rereading the threatening letter with new eyes. All my life, I'd been taught that I was the powerless one, the difficult daughter, the embarrassing sister, the family liability. But maybe the opposite was true. Maybe my willingness to speak truth, to stand firm, to refuse to play by their maybe that was power they didn't know how to counter. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Mia's friend, an attorney named Denise, called me that evening. She listened to my story without interruption, then said simply, "They're trying to scare you into silence. Classic intimidation tactic. If you'd like, I can draft a response that will make them think twice about pursuing this further." "Please," I said. "And what do I owe you for this?" "Nothing," she replied. "Mia's been my friend for 15 years. She designed my firm's branding for free when I was starting out. This is me paying it forward. Besides, I hate bullies, especially rich ones who think they can buy their way out of consequences. The next day, Denise sent me the draft of her response letter. It was masterful, professional, yet subtly threatening, pointing out that any legal proceedings would require sworn testimony and could potentially generate exactly the kind of publicity the Bennett family was hoping to avoid. This should shut them up, Denise said when I called to thank her. But if it doesn't, I'm happy to represent you for real, pro bono. Some cases are just too satisfying to pass up. With Denise's letter sent, I expected another escalation from the Bennetts or my family. Instead, silence descended. No calls, no texts, no legal threats. It was unnerving, like the stillness before a tornado. I used the quiet to refocus on my work and my life. The exhibition I'd been planning was coming together beautifully, featuring artists whose work challenged conventional narratives, perfect for my current mindset. I started attending a weekly art therapy group, finding unexpected healing in creating alongside others who were processing their own pain. And I began writing letters to Vanessa, not to send, just to express the complicated emotions I couldn't share with her directly. In these letters, I poured out everything: my hurt at her rejection, my fear for her future with Troy, my anger at being cast as the villain, but also my memories of our childhood bond, my understanding of the pressure she faced, my enduring love despite everything. You chose the path of approval, I wrote in one letter, and I chose the path of authenticity. I don't blame you for your choice. Dad made approval nearly impossible to achieve and therefore irresistible to chase. But I wish you could see that there's freedom on my path too, even with all its challenges. 3 weeks passed in this strange limbo. The wedding was now just days away, and I had resigned myself to missing it. I told myself it was for the best. Vanessa clearly didn't want me there, and attending would only create tension on what should be her happy day. Then, on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, my gallery manager poked her head into my office. "Someone here to see you, Liv, says she's your sister." My heart lurched. Vanessa is here? Want me to send her away? The protectiveness in her voice made me smile. I'd shared enough of the situation for my coworkers to form a protective circle around me. "No, it's okay. Send her in." A moment later, Vanessa appeared in my doorway. She looked immaculate as always. But there was something strained about her face, dark circles carefully concealed beneath expertly applied makeup. "Hi," she said tentatively. "Hi," I replied, remaining seated behind my desk, a small but deliberate boundary. "This is a surprise." She glanced around my office, taking in the artwork, the organized chaos of exhibition planning spread across my desk. "I've never seen your workplace before. It's nice." "What do you want, Vanessa?" I wasn't trying to be cruel, but small talk felt unbearable after everything that had happened. She sank into the chair opposite my desk. "I don't even know where to start." "Maybe with why you're here." She fiddled with the enormous engagement ring on her finger, a Bennett family heirloom she'd told me proudly when Troy proposed. "The wedding's in 3 days." "I'm aware. Everything's ready. The flowers, the cake, the venue. It's all perfect, exactly what I planned." She looked up at me, her eyes suddenly swimming with tears. "And I hate it. All of it." This was not what I'd expected. "What do you mean?" "I mean I've spent the last month trying to convince myself that uninviting you was the right decision for my future. that Troy's family's approval matters more than having my sister with me on the most important day of my life. She wiped at a tear that had escaped. And I almost believed it, until last night. What happened last night? She took a shaky breath. We had the rehearsal dinner. Everything was perfect. The food, the speeches, the toasts. Senator and Mrs. Bennet were charming everyone. Dad was in his element, networking with all the political connections. Even Mom seemed happy for once. She paused, twisting her engagement ring around her finger. And then I saw Troy step out onto the terrace with Jessica Winters. Jessica Winters, another name I recognized, another associate from their law firm. I followed them, Vanessa continued, her voice hollow. I told myself I was being paranoid, that after what you'd said about Melissa, I was just seeing things that weren't there. But then I heard him. I heard him tell Jessica that this arrangement doesn't have to change anything between us. My heart sank. Oh, Ness. I confronted him after everyone left. He denied it at first, but then... She looked up, her eyes hard now. Then he said that our marriage was primarily a strategic alliance, and that discreet arrangements were common in families like his. As if that was supposed to make it okay. The cold calculation of it stunned me. What did you say? I threw my drink in his face and drove to Mom and Dad's. I really thought they'd be on my side. That Dad would be furious, that Mom would hold me while I cried. Her laugh was bitter. Instead, Mom said I was overreacting, that men in powerful positions have certain needs, and that I should consider what I'd be giving up if I canceled the wedding. And Dad? I asked, already knowing the answer. Dad said that Troy's indiscretions were insignificant compared to the connections the Bennet family could provide. That marriage isn't about romance at our social level, it's about alliance, that I needed to grow up and see the bigger picture. The familiar Sullivan logic, appearance over substance, status over happiness, connection over integrity, laid bare in its cold, transactional glory. So that's it? I asked. You're going through with the wedding anyway? Vanessa looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. That's why I'm here, Liv. I need to know. Was it just Melissa at the engagement party? Or have there been others? The moment of truth had arrived, and with it, a choice. I could tell Vanessa exactly what she wanted to hear, that Troy's infidelity was a one-time mistake, that her parents were right about the value of this strategic alliance. I could smooth things over, as I'd been trained to do my entire life. Or I could tell her the truth, knowing it might destroy her carefully constructed future, but potentially save her from years of unhappiness. I chose truth. It wasn't just Melissa, I said quietly. There was Emma from the charity gala last Christmas. There was his ex-girlfriend Sophia, who he still meets for lunch every month. And now Jessica. I leaned forward. Vanessa, he's not going to change. Men like Troy, men who've been taught they're entitled to everything they want, don't suddenly develop integrity after marriage. She closed her eyes, absorbing the blow. When she opened them again, they were clear and determined. I believe you. I think I've always known somewhere deep down that you were telling the truth. I just didn't want to see it. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I know I'm not marrying Troy on Saturday. She reached across the desk and took my hand. Liv, I'm so sorry. For uninviting you, for not believing you, for choosing the Bennetts over my own sister. I was so caught up in being the perfect Sullivan daughter, in making the perfect match, in living up to Dad's impossible standards that I lost sight of what really matters. The apology I'd been waiting for, delivered with genuine remorse. It should have felt vindicating. Instead, I just felt sad for everything we'd both lost to our family's toxic expectations. "What can I do?" I asked. "Help me," she said simply. "I have 3 days to cancel a wedding that's been a year in planning, to face Mom and Dad's disappointment, to stand up to the Bennetts and their threats. I've never defied any of them before. I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it alone." And there it was, my sister, asking for my help, not to maintain appearances but to break free from them, asking me to stand with her against the very forces that had tried to separate us. "You're not alone, Ness," I said firmly. "You never—" She started to cry then, really cry, the careful makeup she'd applied that morning washing away with her tears. I came around the desk and held her, feeling the tremors that ran through her body as years of perfectionism and people-pleasing began to crumble. "I'm scared, Liv," she whispered against my shoulder. "What if I cancel the wedding and it's the biggest mistake of my life? What if I'm giving up my one chance at having what Mom and Dad want for me?" I pulled back to look her in the eyes. "That's exactly the point, Vanessa. It's what they want for you, not what you want for yourself. And you deserve more than a husband who cheats, parents who excuse it, and in-laws who think everything can be solved with money and threats." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "You've always been the brave one." "No," I corrected her. "I've always been the one who had nothing to lose by being brave. You had their approval to lose, and that made your choices harder. But you're making the brave choice now, and I'm so proud of you for that." For the next hour, we sat in my office and made a plan. We would tackle this methodically, first informing Troy and returning his ring, then notifying guests that the wedding was canceled, then dealing with vendors and deposits. The Bennetts would be furious, our parents would be devastated, but we would face them together. "You can stay with me until you figure out your next steps," I offered. "My apartment's small, but it's perfect," she interrupted. "I need to get away from everything Bennett approved and Sullivan sanctioned. I need to remember who I am underneath all of that." As she stood to leave, she paused at the door. "Liv, there's one more thing. The real reason I uninvited you from the wedding." I steeled myself. "What is it?" "It wasn't just about your appearance or Troy's family being uncomfortable with your outspokenness," she admitted. "It was because every time I look at you, living your authentic life, creating art, being unapologetically yourself, it reminds me of all the compromises I've made, all the parts of myself I've sacrificed to be the daughter our parents wanted. And I was afraid, terrified, really, that having you at my wedding would force me to see the truth about the life I was choosing." Her honesty took my breath away. "Ness, you've always been my mirror, Liv, the one who shows me what courage looks like. I was trying to shatter the mirror instead of facing what it reflected." She smiled sadly. "I'm done hiding from the truth. Whatever comes next, with Troy, with Mom and Dad, with the Bennetts, I want to face it standing beside my sister, not hiding behind a perfect facade." As she left, I sat in my quiet office, processing everything that had happened. The sister who had rejected me was now seeking my help to break free from the very forces that had driven us apart. The family that had labeled me the problem was about to face a much bigger problem in Vanessa's canceled society wedding. And I, the perpetual outsider, the family embarrassment, had somehow become the sanctuary my sister sought in her moment of crisis. The irony wasn't lost on me. But beyond the irony was something more powerful. The possibility of reconciliation, not through my conforming to the Sullivan standard, but through Vanessa's willingness to question it. The chance to rebuild our sisterhood on a foundation of authenticity rather than appearance. That evening, as I prepared my apartment for Vanessa's arrival, setting up the sofa bed and clearing space in my closet, I felt a quiet sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be difficult for her. Breaking free from golden handcuffs always is. But I would be there every step of the way, offering the same unconditional support she had finally offered me. Love without requirements, acceptance without conditions, family without performance. The storm was far from over. The Bennetts would not accept defeat gracefully. Our parents would not easily relinquish their dreams of a powerful alliance. But for the first time in our adult lives, Vanessa and I would weather the storm together, finding strength in our sisterhood rather than allowing it to be weaponized against us. And in that unity, there was hope. Not just for surviving the coming confrontations, but for building something new and beautiful from the wreckage of expectations. We'd both been crushed beneath for too long. The morning after Vanessa's revelation, I woke to find her already up, sitting cross-legged on my sofa bed with her laptop open, color-coded lists spread around her like fallen leaves. Even in crisis, her organizational skills remained impeccable. "I've drafted the cancellation email for guests," she said without looking up. "And I've categorized vendors by cancellation policies. Green for full refunds, yellow for partial, red for no refund possible." I handed her a mug of coffee. "You've been busy." "Couldn't sleep," she admitted, finally glancing up. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but clear and determined. "Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing Troy with Jessica, hearing Dad tell me to grow up about infidelity. It's like I've been living in this beautiful bubble my whole life, and now I can see it was actually a prison cell." I sat beside her, careful not to disturb her meticulously arranged papers. "Breaking out is going to be messy." "I know." She squared her shoulders. "But I'd rather deal with the mess than live a lie." For the first time in our adult lives, I recognized myself in my sister. That fierce determination to live authentically, no matter the cost. It was like looking into a mirror and seeing your reflection finally come into focus after years of distortion. "What's first on the agenda?" I asked. "Troy," she said firmly. "I need to end it face to face, return his ring, and make it absolutely clear this isn't a negotiation. Then I'll send the guest notification emails, then call vendors." She paused. "And then we face Mom and Dad." "We?" I raised an eyebrow. "If you're willing," she said quietly. "I understand if you don't want to get involved in the Sullivan drama again, especially after how they've treated you. But I could really use my big sister's strength." The request touched something deep inside me. Not just the acknowledgement of my strength, but the recognition that I might have something valuable to offer her, beyond shared DNA or childhood memories. For years, I'd thought Vanessa saw me only as an embarrassment, a liability to her perfect image. Now I realized she'd also seen the freedom in my choices, even while feeling unable to make similar ones herself. "I'll be there," I promised. "Every step of the way." She nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. I don't deserve your support after how I treated you." "This isn't about deserving," I said firmly. "It's about choosing. Choosing to stand by each other even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult." We spent the morning fine-tuning her approach. Troy had texted several times since their confrontation at the rehearsal dinner, his messages evolving from angry denials to wounded innocence to patronizing reassurances that she was overreacting to a harmless conversation. Classic manipulation, I observed, scrolling through the texts. He's trying everything to see what works, making you doubt yourself, minimizing your concerns, playing the victim. "It always worked before," Vanessa admitted. "He's very good at making me feel like I'm being unreasonable or too emotional." "That's by design," I told her. Men like Troy, men who've been trained from birth that they're entitled to everything they want, they're expert at making others feel small so they can feel big. She nodded slowly. Like Dad. The simple comparison hung in the air between us, a truth we'd both known but never acknowledged out loud. Our father, Victor Sullivan, had ruled our home with the same mixture of charm, intimidation, and emotional manipulation that Troy employed in his relationship with Vanessa. The pattern was so clear now. My sister had unconsciously chosen a man who replicated the dynamic she'd grown up with. "I've been working so hard to earn Dad's approval my whole life that I never stopped to question whether I should want it in the first place," she said softly. "And then I found a man who treated me exactly the same way, and I called it love." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "We're programmed to seek the familiar, even when the familiar hurts us. Breaking that pattern takes incredible courage." "Like you did." It wasn't a question. "I had fewer golden handcuffs to remove," I reminded her. "Dad wrote me off early. You were the golden child, the one who had to maintain perfection. That's a different kind of prison." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "I always envied your freedom. Even while I was judging your choices, part of me was desperately jealous that you had the courage to make them." The confessions stunned me. All these years, I'd assumed Vanessa pitied me, the rebellious sister who'd sacrificed our father's approval and the financial security that came with it. I'd never imagined she might have envied my independence. "Well," I said, trying to lighten the moment, "today you get to taste that freedom for yourself. Ready to face the dragon?" She took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." We agreed. That Vanessa would meet Troy alone. This was her relationship to end, her stand to take, but I would be waiting nearby, ready to step in if needed. She chose a small cafe in a public location, somewhere Troy wouldn't risk making a scene given his family's obsession with appearances. I settled at a table in the corner, pretending to work on my laptop while keeping a watchful eye on my sister. When Troy arrived 15 minutes late and radiating irritation, I had to resist the urge to intervene immediately. He didn't even bother with a greeting, just slid into the seat across from Vanessa with an exasperated sigh. "This little tantrum has gone on long enough," I heard him say. "The wedding is tomorrow. We have the governor attending, for God's sake." Vanessa sat straight-backed, composed. She looked utterly calm, though I knew from our preparation that morning how nervous she felt. "There isn't going to be a wedding, Troy." His expression shifted from irritation to disbelief. "Don't be ridiculous. Of course there's going to be a wedding. Do you have any idea how much money, how many resources have gone into this event? How many important people have rearranged their schedules to be there?" I understand completely, she said evenly. And I'm sorry for any inconvenience the cancellation causes, but I'm not marrying you. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Is this still about Jessica? I told you that was nothing. A misunderstanding. You're blowing it completely out of proportion. It's not just Jessica, Vanessa replied. It's Melissa at our engagement party. It's Emma from the charity gala. It's your ex-girlfriend Sophia, who you still meet monthly. It's your comment about our marriage being a strategic alliance that doesn't preclude discreet arrangements. His face paled slightly before flushing with anger. Your sister, he spat. She's been filling your head with lies. No, Troy. You've been filling my head with lies for our entire relationship. She removed his grandmother's ring and placed it on the table between them. I deserve better. I deserve honesty, respect, and fidelity. He stared at the ring, then back at her face. I could see the moment he realized she was serious, that his usual tactics of denial, gaslighting, and charm weren't working. His expression hardened. You're making a catastrophic mistake, he said coldly. Do you really think you'll find anyone better than me? A Bennett? With your background, your family's reputation? Vanessa didn't flinch. Better alone than with someone who doesn't respect me. Your father will be furious. Do you have any idea what connections, what opportunities you're throwing away? What this will do to his relationship with my father? My father's business relationships are not my responsibility, she said calmly. And neither is managing your feelings about this decision. Troy's mask of civilized restraint slipped further. This is about your sister, isn't it? That blue-haired embarrassment you uninvited from our wedding. She's turned you against me out of spite. No, Troy. You turned me against you all by yourself. Vanessa stood. The wedding is canceled. I've already notified the venue and started contacting guests. Please don't contact me again. As she turned to leave, Troy grabbed her wrist. You don't get to walk away from me, he hissed. Do you have any idea what my family can do to yours, to your precious sister's little art gallery? One word from my father to his banking connections and... That was my cue. I was out of my seat and beside them in seconds. I believe my sister asked you not to contact her again, I said, keeping my voice deliberately calm but projecting it just loudly enough that nearby tables could hear. And I'd suggest you remove your hand from her wrist before someone, perhaps that nice couple, by the window who are recording this interaction on their phone, gets the wrong impression. Troy's head whipped around to see that indeed, a couple had their phone pointed in our direction, concern evident on their faces. He released Vanessa's wrist as if burned. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and menacing. Yes, it is, I replied. And if you or your family attempt any kind of retaliation against Vanessa, me, or any member of our family, the full story of why this wedding was canceled will become very public. I imagine that would be uncomfortable for a family. In the midst of a Senate campaign. His eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said simply. Unlike you, I have nothing to lose and no reputation to protect. Taking Vanessa's arm, I guided her toward the door. She was trembling slightly, but her head was high, her steps steady. As we reached my car, she finally let out a shaky breath. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, she admitted. And also the most liberating. I squeezed her hand. You were magnificent, a true warrior. I had good backup, she said, giving me a wobbly smile. Now for phase 2, telling the world. Back at my apartment, Vanessa sent the carefully Crafted email to all 250 wedding guests, explaining that the wedding had been canceled and apologizing for the late notice. She purposely kept the explanation vague, due to circumstances beyond our control, to avoid turning her personal pain into public gossip. As responses began flooding in, expressions of sympathy, offers of support, and inevitably, probing questions about what had happened, Vanessa maintained her dignity. She answered each message personally, but kept the details private, focusing instead on practical matters like gift returns and travel arrangement changes. "You're handling this with incredible grace," I told her as we tackled the vendor cancellations together. "I'm trying to remember what you've always known," she replied. "That my worth isn't tied to others' approval or disapproval, that I don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing my own happiness." It was strange and wonderful to hear my own life philosophy, the very philosophy that had created such distance between us, reflected back to me in my sister's words. Strange because for so long I'd believed Vanessa could never understand my choices. Wonderful because it meant we might finally be able to truly see each other. The vendor calls went relatively smoothly until we reached the wedding planner, an imperious woman named Miranda who had been recommended by Helen Bennett herself. She was predictably horrified by the cancellation. "This is simply not done, Miss Sullivan," she sputtered. "Not with 24 hours' notice. The Bennett name, the guests who are already in town, the press coverage." "I understand it's unconventional," Vanessa replied calmly, "but my decision is final. Senator Bennett has already called me personally," Miranda continued, her voice tight with disapproval. "He assures me this is just pre-wedding nerves, that you'll come to your senses." "I have come to my senses," Vanessa interrupted. "That's precisely why I'm canceling. And if Senator Bennett contacts you again, please inform him that any attempt to proceed with wedding preparations against my explicit wishes would constitute harassment." After she hung up, Vanessa turned to me with a small smile. "Did you hear that? I just stood up to the Bennett family matriarch by proxy." "I did hear," I confirmed, unable to hide my pride. "The first of many boundaries you'll set, I imagine." She nodded thoughtfully. "It gets easier each time, doesn't it? Saying no, standing firm, choosing yourself." "It does," I assured her, "though some confrontations are harder than others." We both knew which confrontation she was most dreading. Our parents had been calling incessantly since the emails went out, their messages growing increasingly frantic, then angry, then threatening. We'd agreed to face them together the next day, what should have been Vanessa's wedding day, but the anticipation of that meeting hung over us like a storm cloud. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Vanessa whispered that night as we sat on my small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. "What if Dad says all the right things to make me doubt myself? He's so good at that, making me feel like I'm being childish or unreasonable." "Then I'll be there to remind you of your reasons," I promised. "To reflect back your truth when they try to distort it." She looked at me thoughtfully. "You've been doing that your whole life, haven't you? Standing in your truth even when everyone around you tried to convince you it wasn't valid." "I've tried," I said. "Some days more successfully than others. But yes, that's been my North Star, being authentic, even when it would be easier to conform." "Teach me," she said suddenly, setting down her wine glass with unexpected force. "Teach me how to do that, how to stand firm when the pressure is crushing, how to listen to my own voice instead of Dad's, or society's, or whoever else thinks they know best." The request touched me deeply. For so long, I'd seen Vanessa as a reflection of everything I wasn't, polished where I was rough, composed where I was passionate, accommodating where I was defiant. Now I realized those differences weren't fixed traits, but choices we'd each made in response to the same toxic family dynamics. And choices could change. "It's not something I can teach in a night," I said gently. "It's a practice, a daily choice. To check in with yourself, your real self, not the self you think others want to see. And honor what you find there, even when it's inconvenient or unpopular." "I want to learn," she insisted. "I don't want to wake up at 40 and realize I've lived my entire life to please people who were never going to be pleased anyway." We talked deep into the night, sharing stories and insights from our divergent paths. I told her about the freedom I'd found in creating boundaries with our parents, the authentic connections I'd built once I stopped contorting myself to fit others' expectations. She shared the exhaustion of constant performance, the emptiness of achievements that never quite satisfied our father, the growing suspicion that she was building a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow within. "The hardest part," I admitted, "is accepting that some people simply won't have the capacity to love the authentic you. They'll only love the version of you that serves their needs or confirms their worldview." "Like Mom and Dad," she said quietly. "Possibly," I acknowledged. "But you can't know for sure until you show them your true self. Sometimes people surprise you, and even if they don't, even if they reject the real you, there are others who will embrace it, who will love you more deeply because you're genuine." "Like you did for me," she said. "Even after I hurt you, even after I chose Troy and his family over my own sister, you still showed up when I needed you." "That's what real love looks like," I told her. "Not conditional approval based on performance, but steady presence through all the messiness of being human." The next morning, what should have been Vanessa's wedding day, dawned bright and clear. We dressed carefully for our meeting with our parents, Vanessa borrowing one of my colorful scarves as a small act of defiance against her usual neutral palette. "How do I look?" she asked, striking a pose. "Like yourself," I replied. "Only more so." We arrived at our parents' expansive suburban home to find not just our mother and father waiting, but Troy and his parents as well. A classic Sullivan ambush designed to overwhelm and intimidate. "Remember," I murmured as we approached, "the front door. You don't owe them agreement, only honesty. Your feelings are valid. Your choices are yours to make." Vanessa squared her shoulders. "I've spent 28 years trying to earn their approval. Today, I'm just going to be worthy of my own." The scene inside was exactly as tense as we'd anticipated. Our mother sat rigid on the edge of the sofa, eyes red-rimmed but expression carefully composed. Our father stood by the fireplace, martini in hand despite the early hour. Senator and Mrs. Bennet occupied the love seat, their posture screaming old money and entitlement. And Troy paced by the window, his handsome face set in lines of practiced concern. "Vanessa?" our father began, his voice deceptively gentle. "We're all here because we care about you, about your future. This impulsive decision you've made." "It wasn't impulsive," Vanessa interrupted, her voice steady. "It was the first clear-headed decision I've made in years." Mrs. Bennet leaned forward, all maternal concern. "Darling, every bride gets nervous. These pre-wedding jitters are completely normal. Troy has explained everything about that silly misunderstanding at the rehearsal dinner." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Vanessa replied, "and it wasn't an isolated incident. Troy has been unfaithful throughout our engagement, a fact my sister tried to warn me about, and I refused to hear." All eyes swiveled to me. Senator Bennett's face darkened. Yes, your sister. The one who suddenly reappears in your life just weeks before the wedding and fills your head with these accusations. I never disappeared from Vanessa's life, I said calmly. I was uninvited from her wedding because my appearance and personality didn't fit the Bennett brand, and I kept Troy's infidelity secret for over a year, hoping to spare my sister pain. I only revealed it after she'd already cast me aside. Our father set down his martini with excessive care. Enough of this drama. Vanessa, you've embarrassed us all with this last-minute cancellation, but it's not too late to fix this. Senator Bennett has graciously offered to help us salvage the situation. The guests can be called back, the vendors reinstated. No, Vanessa said simply. The single word seemed to echo in the tastefully decorated living room. Our father blinked, momentarily speechless in the face of such direct refusal. What did you say? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. I said no, Vanessa repeated. I'm not marrying Troy. Not today, not ever. He's been unfaithful repeatedly. And when confronted, he described our relationship as a strategic alliance that wouldn't preclude discreet arrangements. That's not a marriage I want. Troy stepped forward, hands spread in appeal. Baby, you misunderstood what I was saying. I was just trying to be honest about the realities of our world, of marriages and families like mine. I love you. No, you don't, Vanessa cut him off. You love what I represent, the perfect, compliant wife who enhances your image and never questions your behavior. But that's not who I am. Not anymore. Our mother made a small, distressed sound. Vanessa, please, think about what you're throwing away. The Bennett's connections, your father's business relationships, your future. I am thinking about my future, Vanessa insisted. A future where I don't sacrifice my self-respect for status. Where I don't turn a blind eye to infidelity to maintain appearances. Where I don't measure my worth by my husband's family name or my father's approval. The room fell silent. Our father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Senator Bennett looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. Mrs. Bennett was staring at Vanessa as if she'd started speaking in tongues. And our mother, our cautious, perpetually anxious mother who had spent decades prioritizing peace over principle, had an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Something that looked almost like admiration? Victor, she said quietly, turning to our father. Perhaps we should listen to what Vanessa is trying to tell us. The suggestion seemed to snap our father out of his stunned silence. Listen? To this nonsense? Margaret, our daughter is throwing away the alliance of a lifetime because of some unfounded accusations from her troublemaking sister. They're not unfounded, Troy's mother interjected suddenly, her voice tight. All eyes turned to her in surprise. Troy, tell them the truth. Now. Troy's face drained of color. Mother, I don't know what you're— Don't, she cut him off sharply. I've spoken with Jessica, and Melissa, and that intern from last summer. I've been cleaning up your messes. For years, smoothing things over with these women, offering settlements and NDAs. I did it to protect your father's career, our family name. But I won't stand here and call this young woman a liar when we both know she isn't. The room erupted into chaos, Troy sputtering denials, Senator Bennett demanding silence, our father bellowing about betrayal. Through it all, Vanessa remained calm, her eyes locked with Mrs. Bennet's in a moment of unexpected female solidarity across enemy lines. "That's enough!" Our mother's voice, normally so restrained, cut through the commotion with surprising authority. "Victor, Richard, stop this immediately. Can't you see that we, all of us, have been pushing these young people into a marriage that was never going to work? For what? Business connections? Social standing? Political alliances? Is that really more important than our daughter's happiness?" Our father stared at our mother as if he'd never seen her before. "Margaret, no, Victor. I've spent 30 years deferring to your judgment, prioritizing your ambitions over everything else, including our daughter's well-being. I watched you push Olivia away because she wouldn't conform to your narrow vision of success. I'm not going to stand by while you do the same to Vanessa." The declaration hung in the air, as shocking as it was unexpected. Our mother, our cautious, conflict-averse mother, was finally taking a stand. Vanessa reached out and took my hand, squeezing it tight. Together, we watched as the carefully constructed facade of family harmony crumbled, revealing the truth that had always lurked beneath, that our family's appearance of perfection had come at the cost of authentic connection. That status had been prioritized over happiness. That performance had replaced love. "We're leaving now," Vanessa announced into the charged silence. "All of you can continue arguing about alliances and appearances if you want, but I'm choosing a different path." As we turned to go, our mother stood abruptly. "Wait," she said. "I'm coming with you." Our father's jaw dropped. "Margaret, have you lost your mind?" "No, Victor," she replied calmly. "I think I've finally found it." And with that, our mother, who had never openly defied our father in 30 years of marriage, walked across the room to stand beside her daughters. The three of us left together, stepping out into the sunshine of what would have been Vanessa's wedding day, but had instead become something far more significant. The day the Sullivan women reclaimed their power, their voices, and their right to define their own worth. As we drove away, our mother in the back seat looking both terrified and exhilarated by her own boldness, Vanessa turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me that it's never too late to start over, that standing in your truth is worth any price." "Don't thank me," I told her, glancing in the rearview mirror at our mother, who was staring out the window with an expression of wonder, like someone seeing the world in color for the first time. "This is just the beginning of the story we're writing together. Our real story, not the one others tried to write for us." And as we drove toward an uncertain but authentic future, I felt the final pieces of resentment and hurt between us dissolve, replaced by something stronger and more enduring. The bond of sisters who had found their way back to each other by choosing truth over pretense, courage over comfort, and love over fear. The road ahead would be challenging. Our father wouldn't surrender control easily. The Bennets wouldn't accept defeat gracefully. Our mother's newfound independence would be tested repeatedly. But for the first time, we would face these challenges together. Three Sullivan women united in the most revolutionary act of all, being authentically ourselves, regardless of the cost. 6 months can change everything, or nothing at all. In my case, it changed almost everything. Spring had melted into summer, and summer was now surrendering to the first crisp whispers of autumn. The maple outside my apartment window, the one I'd painted at least a dozen times in different seasons, was just beginning to edge its leaves with gold. A quiet reminder that transformation was always possible, always happening, even when we paused didn't notice. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through emails on my tablet, when a notification popped up. A reminder for tonight's gallery opening. My gallery opening. The thought still gave me a little thrill, a touch of disbelief. 3 months ago, I'd taken the biggest professional risk of my life. When the owner of the small gallery where I'd worked announced his retirement, I'd gathered every ounce of courage and applied for a small business loan to buy it. With my alternative appearance and unconventional background, I'd expected rejection from the conservative local banks. What I hadn't expected was my mother showing up at my apartment one rainy Tuesday, checkbook in hand. "I've been saving for years," she'd explained, perching awkwardly on my sofa, still not entirely comfortable in my colorful, cluttered space. "A little here, a little there. Money your father didn't know about or control." I always told myself, "It was for emergencies, but I think this qualifies as something more important, an opportunity." The memory still brought tears to my eyes, not just the generosity of the gesture, but what it represented. My mother's first real step toward financial independence, her choice to support my dreams rather than my father's expectations. A knock at my door pulled me from my reverie. I opened it to find Vanessa, looking effortlessly chic in a way that once would have made me feel self-conscious, but now just made me smile. Her designer handbag was gone, replaced by a handmade leather tote from a local artisan. Her hair, once maintained in a sleek, conservative bob, now fell in soft waves past her shoulders. But the biggest change wasn't visible. It was in her posture, her energy, the quiet confidence that had replaced her. "Former nervous perfectionism, ready for the big night?" she asked, stepping inside and handing me a small gift bag. A little pre-opening present. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 3 small charms, a paintbrush, a key, and a bird in flight. "It's beautiful," I said, slipping it onto my wrist. "What do the charms mean?" "The paintbrush is obvious," she said, helping herself to coffee. "The key is for the gallery, your gallery now. And the bird," she smiled, "that's for the freedom you showed. Me was possible. The freedom you've always embodied, even when I was too blind to see its value." I hugged her, still amazed sometimes at the ease between us now. A far cry from the tension and distance of 6 months ago. "How was your session with Dr. Matthews?" Vanessa had been seeing a therapist since the canceled wedding, working through the complex tangle of family patterns, people-pleasing tendencies, and identity questions that had defined so much of her life. Good. Challenging, but good. She settled onto a bar stool at my kitchen counter. We talked about Dad's latest olive branch. Dr. Matthews thinks it's still about control, not genuine reconciliation. Our father had been alternating between cold silence and manipulative attempts at reconnection ever since the wedding day confrontation. His latest peace offering was a job opportunity at a prestigious firm owned by a golf buddy. A position that would require Vanessa to abandon her fledgling interior design business and return to the corporate world she'd left behind. "And what do you think?" I asked, genuinely curious. The old Vanessa would have jumped at any chance to regain our father's approval. This new Vanessa was harder to predict. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "I think he still doesn't understand that I'm not for sale, that my self-determination matters more to me now than his approval." She shrugged. "I sent a polite no thank you email this morning." "How did that feel?" "Terrifying," she admitted with a laugh. and then amazing, like I was choosing myself all over again. She glanced at her watch. We should get going. Mom said she'd meet us at the gallery at 4 to help with the final setup. Our mother, Margaret Sullivan, had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation of all. After walking out with us that fateful, almost wedding day, she had stayed at my apartment for 2 weeks, alternating between panic attacks about her 30-year marriage and exhilarating moments of self-discovery. She'd eventually moved into a small but charming apartment of her own, the first space she'd ever chosen and decorated without our father's input. To everyone's surprise, including her own, she'd discovered a talent for bookkeeping and now handled the accounts for my gallery and Vanessa's design business, plus a growing roster of small local businesses who appreciated her meticulous attention to detail. At 58, my mother was experiencing independence for the first time, and watching her blossom was like witnessing a time-lapse video of a tightly closed flower finally opening to the sun. "Let's go make art history," I said, grabbing my jacket. Or at least Sullivan family history. The gallery, now called True North, a name that felt right for a space dedicated to authentic artistic expression, had been transformed over the past 3 months. I'd repainted the walls, installed better lighting, and most importantly, curated a collection of local artists whose work challenged conventional boundaries and expectations. Tonight's opening exhibition, titled Becoming, featured work exploring themes of identity, transformation, and personal truth. Themes that felt deeply relevant to my own journey. When we arrived, my mother was already there, arranging elegant flower arrangements amid the artwork. She looked younger somehow, the perpetual worry lines that had marked her forehead for as long as I could remember softened, her movements more fluid and relaxed. "There are my girls," she said, embracing us both. "Everything looks wonderful, Olivia. I'm so proud of what you've created here." "We all created it," I corrected her. "I couldn't have done this without you and Vanessa." It was true. My mother's financial support and bookkeeping skills, Vanessa's design eye and organizational talents. The gallery was a family enterprise in the best possible sense, a collaboration built on mutual respect rather than obligation or control. As we put the finishing touches on the space, preparing for the doors to open at 6, I felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost overwhelmed me. 6 months ago, I'd been the family outcast, the embarrassing sister with blue hair who wasn't welcome at a society wedding. Now I was standing in my own gallery, surrounded by art that spoke my truth, with the 2 women I loved most by my side. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been painful conversations, tears, moments of doubt. There had been financial stress as we all adjusted to lives independent from Victor Sullivan's wealth and influence. There had been social fallout in the conservative circles where the canceled Bennett-Sullivan wedding had created ripples of gossip and speculation. But through it all, we'd discovered something precious. That authenticity, while costly, brought rewards no amount of social status or financial security could provide. That being true to yourself attracted people who loved the real you, not the performance. That it was never too late to choose a different path. The first guests began arriving. Promptly at 6, local artists, friends, community members curious about the new gallery. To my surprise and delight, a significant contingent from the art world in neighboring cities had also made the trip, drawn by the press coverage our opening had received in several respected arts publications. By 7, the gallery was comfortably full, the atmosphere vibrant with conversation, laughter, and the particular energy that emerges when art connects with its audience. I moved through the space, greeting guests, answering questions about the exhibited works, watching faces light up with recognition or contemplation as they engaged with the pieces I'd so carefully selected. And then, just as I was explaining a particularly complex installation to a potential buyer, I felt a shift in the room's energy. A collective intake of breath, a momentary pause in conversation. I turned to see what had caused the reaction, and there, framed in the gallery doorway, stood my father. Victor Sullivan looked precisely as he always had, perfectly tailored suit, immaculate silver hair, commanding presence that seemed to compress the available oxygen in any space he entered. But something was different. There was a hesitancy in his posture that I'd never seen before, a flicker of uncertainty in eyes that had always radiated absolute confidence. My mother went very still beside me. Vanessa, across the room, set down her champagne glass with deliberate care. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if we were all suspended in amber, caught between past and present, between the family dynamics we'd known and the new reality we were creating. Then, to my astonishment, my father did something I'd never seen him do in my entire life. He removed his perfectly polished shoes at the door. We had a shoes-off policy to protect the gallery's beautiful hardwood floors, and waited to be invited in. It was such a small gesture, yet so profound in what it represented. An acknowledgement of boundaries, a respect for rules not his own, a tacit admission that he was entering our space, not the other way around. I crossed the room slowly, aware of every eye in the gallery following my progress. When I reached him, I didn't speak immediately, just studied his face. The face that had terrified and intimidated me for so much of my life. The face whose approval I'd stopped seeking years ago out of sheer self-preservation. "Hello, Dad," I said finally. "This is a surprise." "Olivia." His voice was gruff, contained. "I hope I'm not intruding." The Victor Sullivan I knew never worried about intruding. He occupied space as if it belonged to him by divine right. This careful question was so out of character that for a moment I wondered if he was ill. "The exhibition is open to the public," I said, neither welcoming nor rejecting him. "Would you like to see the collection?" He nodded, and I noticed his eyes taking in my appearance, the blue hair now streaked with a vibrant purple, the vintage dress I'd chosen for tonight, the new tattoo on my forearm of 3 small birds in flight, representing myself, Vanessa, and our mother. In the past, his gaze would have communicated clear disapproval. Today, there was something else there. A question, perhaps, or a dawning recognition that the daughter he'd dismissed for so long had created something meaningful despite, or perhaps because of, his rejection. "Your mother mentioned the opening," he said as I led him through the gallery. "She's very proud of what you've accomplished here." The admission startled me. Not that my mother was proud, I knew that, but that she and my father were communicating at all. As far as I knew, they'd had minimal contact since she'd moved out, and what interactions they'd had were strained and formal, focused on practical matters related to their separation. "Mom's been instrumental in making this happen," I said. "So has Vanessa. It's been a family effort, just not the family arrangement you might have expected." He absorbed this without comment, pausing in front of a large canvas, one of my own paintings, though he didn't know that yet. It depicted 3 women standing on a cliff edge, their faces turned toward an approaching storm, their hands linked, in a chain of feminine solidarity. I'd titled it, "The Sullivan Women." "This is powerful," he said after a long moment. "There's something familiar about it." "It's us," I said simply. "Mom, Vanessa, me, facing the storm together." His eyes widened slightly as he made the connection, seeing the echoes of our features in the painted figures, recognizing the symbolic storm as the upheaval of the past 6 months, the canceled wedding, the familial rupture, the new independence of the women who had once oriented their lives around his approval. "You painted this." It wasn't a question. "I did." "I didn't know you were so talented." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I never really looked at your work before." "No," I agreed. "You didn't." We stood in silence before the painting, the weight of years of mutual misunderstanding and missed connections between us. Then, to my surprise, he said, "I've been wrong about a lot of things, Olivia." The statement, so uncharacteristic of a man who prided himself on being right about everything, left me momentarily speechless. Before I could formulate a response, Vanessa approached, her posture wary but composed. "Dad," she greeted him. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Vanessa." He hesitated, then added, "You look well." It was true. My sister glowed with a vitality that had been absent during her engagement to Troy. Free from the constant pressure to be perfect, to please everyone, to maintain appearances at all costs, she had discovered a natural radiance that no amount of expensive skincare or designer clothing could replicate. "I am well," she confirmed. "Better than I've been in years, actually." Our father nodded, absorbing this. "Your design business. Your mother tells me it's succeeding." "It is." Vanessa's chin lifted slightly. "Turns out there's a real market for interiors that prioritize personal meaning over status symbols. Who knew?" The gentle Barb wasn't lost on our father, who had always insisted on decorating our childhood home for impression rather than comfort or joy. To his credit, he didn't bristle or dismiss her comment as he once would have. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months," he said instead, "about the kind of father I've been, the kind of husband, the values I've prioritized and passed on, or tried to pass on, to both of you." Vanessa and I exchanged glances, both of us too surprised by this direction to interrupt. "When you walked away from that wedding, Vanessa," he continued, "my first reaction was anger, embarrassment, concern about what people would say, about the business relationships that might suffer. But as the weeks passed, I started to question why those were my first concerns, rather than your happiness." He turned back to my painting, studying the 3 female figures with their faces to the storm. "And then your mother left. After 30 years of marriage, she chose independence over security, authenticity over appearance. It was illuminating. My mother had joined us now, completing the tableau that mirrored my painting, 3 Sullivan women facing Victor, Sullivan across a divide that had seemed unbridgeable just 6 months ago. "Victor," she acknowledged him, her voice steady. "I'm glad you could come tonight." "Margaret." His eyes softened slightly. "The place looks wonderful. All of it." "What?" "The 3 of you have built here." An awkward silence fell. Years of hurt and misunderstanding couldn't be erased with a few admissions, a single gallery visit. The distance between us remained vast, the trust broken by decades of conditional love and emotional manipulation. Yet something was shifting, however slightly. A door that had seemed permanently closed was, perhaps, cracking open just enough to let in a sliver of possibility. "Thank you for coming," I said finally. It means something that you're here." He nodded, understanding both what I was saying and what I wasn't. That his presence was noted, that it mattered, but that it wasn't enough on its own to repair what had been broken. "I should let you get back to your guests," he said. Perhaps we could have dinner sometime, the four of us, to talk." The invitation hung in the air, fraught with complexity. Part of me wanted to reject it outright, to protect the hard-won peace and authenticity we'd achieved without him. Another part recognized the courage it must have taken for a man like Victor Sullivan to extend such an olive branch, to enter our space on our terms, to acknowledge, however obliquely, that he might have been wrong. I looked at my mother and sister, silently conferring. Whatever we decided, it would be a collective choice. No more divide and conquer. No more playing us against each other. "We'll think about it," my mother said, speaking for all of us. "And we'll let you know." He accepted this partial answer with a nod. "That's fair." He gestured to the gallery around us. "Congratulations, Olivia. What you've created here is remarkable." After he left, we stood together in a small circle, processing the unexpected encounter. "Do you think he's really changed?" Vanessa asked, voicing the question we were all considering. "I don't know," my mother replied honestly. 30 years of marriage to the man tells me to be cautious. But people can surprise you. I surprised myself, after all. "What do you think, Liv?" Vanessa turned to me. I considered the question carefully. "I think change is possible for anyone who genuinely wants it. The real question is how much he wants it, and why. Is it because he genuinely recognizes the harm his values and behavior caused? Or is it because he's uncomfortable with the consequences of his actions and wants to restore his control?" "Maybe it's a bit of both," my mother suggested. "People are complex, rarely all one thing or another. Even Victor." "Well, we don't have to decide tonight," I said. "We can take our time, set our boundaries, protect what we've built together." As our guests continued to enjoy the exhibition, several approaching to compliment my painting of the three women facing the storm, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 6 months. From being the unwanted sister, the family embarrassment, to standing in my own gallery with my mother and sister beside me, united in our commitment to authenticity over appearance, truth over convenience, love over fear. The path hadn't been straight or easy. There had been moments of doubt, practical, challenges, emotional setbacks. The Bennett family had indeed tried to cause problems, Troy's father making calls that temporarily threatened my gallery loan, spreading rumors in their social circle that painted Vanessa as unstable and me as manipulative. But their attempts to regain control had only strengthened our resolve and, ironically, brought us closer together. My mother had faced the daunting challenge of building an independent life after decades of financial and emotional dependence. Vanessa had weathered the social fallout of a canceled society wedding, the painful process of untangling herself from Troy's manipulation, the gradual rebuilding of her sense of self outside her father's expectations. And I had confronted my own lingering resentments, my defensive patterns, my fear of hoping for a genuine family connection after years of disappointment. Yet through it all, something beautiful had emerged, a sisterhood deeper than DNA, a mutual support system based on respect rather than obligation, a family redefined by choice rather than circumstance. As the evening progressed, The gallery filled with laughter, conversation, and genuine appreciation for the art we'd assembled. Several pieces sold, including my painting of the three Sullivan women, purchased by a prominent local collector who said it spoke to her about feminine resilience and the power of community. By the time the last guest departed, just after 10, the exhibition was officially a success, artistically, financially, and personally. We closed the doors and collapsed onto the vintage sofa I'd installed in the gallery's small reception area. Exhausted, but exhilarated. "We did it," I said, looking at my mother and sister with a sense of wonder that hadn't faded despite months of working together. "We really did it. And it's just the beginning," Vanessa added, kicking off her heels with a sigh of relief. "True North Gallery is officially on the map." My mother smiled, the expression transforming her face in a way that still surprised me. For so many years, her smiles had been careful, contained, appropriate. Now they were full and genuine, reaching her eyes and softening the worry lines that had once seemed permanently etched into her forehead. "I'm so proud of both of you," she said, "and of us, together. What we've built. Who we're becoming." The simple statement encompassed so much: our professional achievements, yes, but more importantly, our personal transformations. The courage we'd each found to prioritize truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, love over fear. The family we'd created not through obligation but through choice, day by day, conversation by conversation, boundary by boundary. "To the Sullivan women," Vanessa proposed, raising her water glass in a toast. "May we never stop becoming." "To the Sullivan women," we echoed, our glasses meeting with a gentle chime that seemed to resonate beyond the gallery walls into the future we were creating together. Later that night, back in my apartment, I stood at the window watching the maple tree's leaves rustling in the gentle autumn breeze. 6 months ago, those same branches had been bare, winter-stripped and dormant. Now they were full and beginning their transformation to gold and crimson, a visible reminder that change was constant, that nothing remained static, that even the most deeply rooted patterns could shift with time and intention. I thought about my father's unexpected appearance at the gallery, his halting acknowledgement that he might have been wrong, his request for a family dinner. I wasn't naive enough to believe that one visit signaled a complete transformation. The patterns of a lifetime wouldn't change overnight if they changed at all. Trust, once broken, had to be rebuilt slowly, intentionally, with clear boundaries and consistent respect. Yet there was something powerful in the possibility, however remote, of reconciliation, not through my conforming to his expectations or shrinking myself to fit his comfort, but through his expanding his understanding of what family could mean, what success could look like, what love could encompass. Whether that possibility ever materialized or not, I was at peace with where we stood, my mother, my sister, and me. Together, we had done what once seemed impossible: broken generational patterns of performance-based love, redefined success on our own terms, created a family dynamic built on mutual respect and genuine care rather than control and obligation. I touched the bracelet Vanessa had given me earlier that day, running my finger over the 3 charms: the paintbrush for creativity, the key for opportunity, the bird for freedom. Each represented an aspect of the journey we'd undertaken, separately, and together. The paintbrush reminded me that we each had the power to create our own lives, to envision something different than what had been modeled for us, to add color and texture to the blank canvas of possibility. The key symbolized the doors we'd opened, to independence, to authentic connection, to self-determination. Doors that had seemed locked forever until we found the courage to try the handle, to fashion new keys when the old ones no longer served. And the bird in flight represented the ultimate gift we'd given ourselves and each other. The freedom to be fully, unapologetically who we were, no matter how uncomfortable that made others. The freedom to make mistakes, to learn, to change our minds. The freedom to define family on our own terms, to choose love over fear, truth over pretense, growth over stagnation. I slipped the bracelet off and placed it on my nightstand, where it caught the soft light from my bedside lamp. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new choices. The journey wasn't over, would never be over as long as we were, alive and growing. There would be difficult conversations, setbacks, moments of doubt. But tonight, I was content with how far we'd come. From being uninvited from my sister's wedding because I might embarrass her perfect future in-laws, to standing beside her in mutual support and authentic connection. From being the family outcast to being part of a stronger, truer family than I'd ever imagined possible. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every painful step, every tough conversation, every moment of vulnerability and uncertainty. Because on the other side of that difficulty, we'd found something precious beyond measure. The freedom to be ourselves, the courage to stand in our truth, and the discovery that when we do, we attract exactly the connections we most need and deserve. As I drifted toward sleep, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to disappoint others in service of our own integrity. And sometimes, in doing so, we create the possibility for deeper, more authentic connections than we ever thought possible. True North was never about a perfect destination. It was about orientation, about knowing which direction led toward authenticity and following that path, no matter how challenging the terrain. Together, the Sullivan women had found our true north, and though the journey would continue with all its complexities and uncertainties, we would face it as we had faced these past 6 months, side by side, eyes open, hearts aligned with our deepest truths. And in that alignment, there was a strength no external approval or validation could ever provide. The immeasurable power of women who had found their voices, claimed their worth, and chosen themselves. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.